Hey guys, Burkhammer here, and today I want to talk to you about Model Match. Model Match is a feature that is available with Express LRS, and it works by matching a specific receiver to a model file within your transmitter. This feature works on any transmitter running OpenTX or EdgeTX, and it'll work on any receiver running Express LRS, whether it is the Radio Master RP2, RP3, RP3H. It'll even work on the receiver that is built into the FlyDragon Flyberless unit. But before we get into Model Match, you might not need Model Match at all. If you're one of those guys that perhaps just has a bunch of different electric helicopters, you're flying them all with the same model file in your transmitter, Model Match might not be something that you're interested in, so you can skip this video all along. However, if you're a guy like me that has electric helicopters, nitro helicopters, you have, say, a few foamies, say you're flying some micro machines like I'm flying the OMP M2 MK2, and so you have different model files within your transmitter, the Model Match is something that perhaps you would want to use because it'll help you solve a couple of fundamental problems when you head out to the field. So I have my transmitter here, TX16S. I'm using one of my electric helicopter files, which reads Goblin Raw. Now, this model name is coming from the Nexus Flyberless system using the model name widget that I explain and talk about during a previous video. But this is one model file that I use for all my electrics. So in this model file, I fly my Goblin Raw, Goblin Pro, all my Tron helicopters, my Excel Power helicopters, and everything that I own that is an electric helicopter flying with the Nexus Flyberless system and the RP3H receiver. So this is great. I just literally fly, I land, I unplug my helicopter, I turn off my transmitter, I turn on my transmitter for the next flight, and then I happen to plug in my Goblin Pro. This model file will bring the Model Pro name in here. It'll do my flight count for that helicopter, and I'll go and fly. Where the problem comes in is when I decide to, for example, fly my nitro helicopter. So say I'm flying my Raw right here. I land, I unplug my flight pack, and then I turn my transmitter off, and then I just don't think about it. I turn my transmitter on, and I decide that I want to fly my Nitro, one of my Tron Nitro helicopters. Well, some problems could happen, because what's going to happen is it's going to make the right connection to the receiver, but my Nitro has a completely different configuration than my electric. For example, on the Nitro, my glow-at-nighter works off of the SD switch. I have direct throttle control on my bank 1, meaning my throttle stick or my collective stick controls my carburetor barrel. I have an idle here on this knob, so I can decrease my idle while the engine is running and idling. So there's a lot of different things on that Tron file. The problem is, because there's no model match, again, it's going to make a connection to the receiver, and some bad things could happen. Servos could bind. It's just not a good idea. So if I don't remember to go into Manage Models and select my BK Nitron helicopter here, select model. If I don't remember to do that and I don't have model match, again, some really bad things could happen. Same applies to, for example, me trying to fly the OMP M2, which I have right here, and say I decide to fly this guy, and I was flying my Nitro before, and I plug in. Again, some potentially bad things could happen because I need to be on my M2 Evo MK2 model right here before I decide to plug this guy in. The best way around this situation is by using Model Match. So Model Match will basically only connect to the receiver that is matched to that model file. And I'm going to show you how to do that. There's two things you have to do in order for that to take place. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to fire up the transmitter here, go back to the model in question, and we have to basically enable model match. And you do that by going to the Express LRS Lua in your transmitter. So I'm going to go ahead and power up my Goblin raw. I'm not going to plug in my flight pack, no need. I can just plug in my USB-C from the computer just to power on the receiver. As you can see, I have a connection established. Before I go to that Lua, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the model menu, and under the very first screen, under internal RF, you're going to see that is set to CRSF. It obviously needs to be in order for it to work with Express LRS. And then you're going to see that the receiver ID, which is right here, is set to 0. And that ID is used by this model, and it's also used by the BK Nitron and the M2 Evo MK2 helicopters. So I'm just going to change that receiver ID to 1, okay? But that's not enough. Once I make that change, I have to go into the sys menu, go to my Express LRS Lua, and then here under model match, it automatically turned it on. Now it's set to on, and it's set to ID 1. On some transmitters, depending which one you have, this might not be automatically turned on. So those two things need to be happening. See how it's yelling at me? It says sensor lost, model mismatch. Because my receiver ID is 0 and it's not set to model match, and my transmitter now is set to model match and receiver ID of 1, okay? So again, two things you have to do, just to recap. Under the model menu, internal RF, you have to select a unique ID. So for practical purposes, I'm going to have all my electric helicopters on receiver ID number 1, and that is going to cover everything that I have that flies with the same model file. My SAB helis, my Tron helis, my Excel Power helis, my OMP M7, and all those helicopters, okay? So I have the ID of 1 for the receiver, and then again in the Express LRS Lua, I have model match right here, turned on, ID 1. Okay, so now I have to go ahead and tell the receiver that it is ID number 1 and that it has model matched enabled. So let's show you how to do that. So I have to go ahead and plug in my receiver without powering on my transmitter. So I am simply going to go ahead and feed power to my receiver by plugging in the receiver to the computer, and you can see the blinking light right there, and you have to give it some time. This is an RP3H. I believe it takes 30 seconds. I might be wrong. It could be a little longer, but all receivers vary a little bit. So we're just going to give it a little bit time and see what happens. You will eventually see how it goes from blinking like this to blinking very, very fast. And there it goes. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go either to your phone or to your computer, and you're going to find a Wi-Fi network here called Express LRS. And you can see my Wi-Fi networks here. It might take a little bit of time for it to come up. Let's see. And there you have it. So I'm going to join that Wi-Fi network, and that basically allows me to join my receiver. And so eventually this dialog will come up, and this works on your computer, or it also works on your phone. So if you want to use your phone, you simply find that network, you join it, and then this will come up. If this doesn't come up, you can always use a web browser. So you can use something like Chrome and just look for IP address 10.0.0.1, and it'll take you to this screen right here. Now, when you go down here, this is the same screen that you would use to update the firmware on your receiver. I did a video explaining that. Look it up. It's called, I believe, binding phrases or so. But without having to update the receiver, just under model, you're going to find, if you scroll down, the protocol is CRSF, which is fine, and then model match. So what we're going to do is we're going to enable that, and we're going to assign it model ID 1, which is what I selected for all my electric helicopters. So from now on, only those models that have the receiver updated to these settings will connect to that particular model on my transmitter, which is called, in this case, Goblin Raw, but it changes name based on the helicopter because it's, again, pulling data from Rotorflight. So I'm going to go ahead and save this, and I get a set configuration updated. Okay. And that's it. As simple as that. So now My Goblin Raw is set to model ID number 1, so it should connect to the transmitter. So let's see. And here's my Goblin Raw. And once again, under internal RF, I have ID number 1. So let's go ahead and plug it in. Again, I'm not using my flat pack. Just need to plug it in with my USB-C cable to the computer. Boom, there it goes. It's connected, no problem. Now, one way to verify that the connection is actually working is by bringing up rotor flight, for example, because I noticed that even if the model ID does not match, it still shows you a connection, but it will not do anything. So in other words, if you look at rotor flight, as I move the sticks, it is moving, okay? But this is not the case if the model match does not match the ID on that particular models. So I'm gonna go ahead and update my Nitro now, and I'm gonna assign it ID number 2. So let's see how that goes. So I just basically plugged in my Fly Dragon. I waited about a minute, took longer with the Fly Dragon than it did with the Nexus. Found the network, get this little screen here, this join network, enable model match, and I'm going to use number 2, save. And voila, configuration updated. So now if I leave my model on Goblin Raw, which as I showed you before, it has ID number 1. If I plug in my Nitro right now, we'll see what happens. It says telemetry recovered, but you can hear my glow igniter going crazy. That means it's not getting any kind of connection, even though it shows there's a connection here. As you can see here, moving the sticks does not do anything. So there's no absolute chance I can power this up, go to Goblin Raw, and mess this up. No. So now I'm just simply gonna go and change models. I unplugged the helicopter because there's no reason for it to be making so much noise. Now I'm going to my Nitro, and then I'm going to go to model, internal RF, and I'm going to set this to 2. And I just learned that when you do that, your Express LRS Lua automatically adjusts. So now you see model match is on and ID is 2. So now, theoretically speaking, my Nitro should connect. So let's give it a shot. Power it on. Now I'm connected. That is my X-Guard switch beeping. Anyhow, I'm gonna see if I can arm by holding throttle cut, arming right here. And now I am armed, and the switch crazy beeping went away. And now I have a perfect connection to one of my Nitro helicopters. And as you can see here, everything is working. So I guess that's one of the main features or problem-solving options that Model Match offers. Your inability to fire up and perhaps arm a model with the wrong model file. Another fundamental problem that Model Match can offer you is the fact that when you have a model with a unique ID right here, you also have the ability to have a completely different Express LRS configuration for that one model. So for example, right here, the packet rate is 333. If I wanted to fly this little guy at, like, say, I don't know, 250 instead of 333, okay, 250 hertz. I don't know why I would want to do that, but let's say I did. Then I could just do that, and these Express LRS settings are going to be tied to this model file. So if I change the model file now, and let's say I want to go to my Tron Dynamic, if I go there, and then I go now to the Express LRS, you're going to see this is still at 333. So if I want to fly the Dynamic at D500 because it's lower latency, then it's D500. So this is really, really cool. If you don't use Model Match, you cannot change your packet rate, your telemetry ratio per model. Now you might be asking yourself, why would I want to do that? Well, you could be one of those guys that say you fly high-end helicopters, performance 3D helicopters. You might also have, I don't know, some FPV things, say you have a quad or you have a plane that flies FPV, and in that instance, for example, you want a lot of range. You want to take that thing 5 miles away. So then obviously you want to run your helicopter at like D500 or something, a very fast rate like that, and you want to fly that FPV quad or plane at 50 hertz so that you get the range, right? You're going to sacrifice some latency in exchange for range. But the beauty of this is, again, this will work individually per model file, whereas if you don't have model match or a unique ID per model, then you don't have the ability to customize different telemetry ratios and packet rates per model file. So it's a really, really cool feature to have. You might not need to use it, but it is there. Okay, so I hope you guys get a hang of what model match is all about. So I hope that these tips were useful, and if model match is something that you think you need, go for it. It's not that hard to do. You can also do it from within your phone. So again, I hope this was useful, and we'll see you next time.